Oh, hi there. Today I wanted to discuss, well, it's tonight really. It's 12:37 Pacific time. I wanted to discuss my offhand opinion of Don Cherry. I know I gotta tread somewhat carefully on this subject because I actually don't have that many positive things to say about him. He's well respected within the hockey community and he's earned it. However, as I was growing up, I didn't watch that much of Coach's Corner. I watched a little bit of it and not really that much. My own father discouraged it gently, going, "Oh, he's crazy. He's a Scot and things like that." And by based on the clothing he wore, even though it's expensive clothing, um, it would be easy to believe that as you're growing up. I mean, that shouldn't be a determining factor, especially within the sports propaganda media outlets. However, there are other things. For one thing that is obvious, he's one of those old geezers who thinks because he says that that's the way it is, that's the way it is. And that would be fine if he were correct about the situation. However, I have seen a time or two where he has not been correct, where he's been wrong. And who really wants to deal with a grouchy old asshole who lays down decrees like it's a fucking Bible and is actually factually wrong about what he's saying? And I've heard him promote players that, were duds. They didn't go anywhere, they didn't get anything done. And that's hockey is a game of chance. That's the whole thing about it, and you're not always gonna be right. However, a lot of other people, when they make a decision and they're proven to be wrong, they're shown as being stupid and whatever. Don Cherry will not tolerate being called stupid or anything like that, and that's because if he even still has a prostate left, because that might be something up for other people to want to discuss. Certainly not me. He is what you'd call a hard ass, and always griping and complaining. He is. And it's like, excuse me, you're wearing at least a $5,000 suit, a different one every time. Shut the fuck up with your bitching. Okay, I understand there are things you don't like. That's fine. There are a lot of things I don't like. But I don't bring this negative, bitchy fucking attitude to the game. Okay, you lived through some times that were different and people had different perceptions and things were different. That's understandable. But because you're an old man, Don Cherry, that doesn't mean that you can stomp around as if you're Godzilla, because you're not. And I have the hindsight of learning from your mistakes as other hockey fans have that advantage. That's an advantage. I'm not going to say it's not. But I will say that there have been many times where Don Cherry's just been plain fucking wrong. And it's not what he wants to hear. He tends to get, a bit belligerent when he doesn't get his way. But, at this point in time, he can just shut the fuck up. Um, I know he had a go at Matt Cook at one point. I'm not exactly sure why. That could have been open to debate because Matt Cook was known for being a bit of a dirty player. He may have had a point there or not. There wasn't enough of a story to tell to the public for anybody easily to find out about. And that's a part of the whole fucking thing about what the National Hockey League used to be about. It used to be their firm message, simplistic message, and if you contradicted it or thought outside the box, you were immediately silenced. So you get big stupid assholes, much like Christians or Catholics or whatever you want to call them. Just idiots who will slam down a big giant book that they probably didn't even read all themselves, lay down decrees, and that's the way it is. And it's like, no, you're still an asshole and you haven't proved anything at all. I could slam down a book and, talk in an angry tone too if I wanted to. doesn't make me right. And it most certainly doesn't make Don Cherry right when he does it. And, um, some people would go, "Ooh, okay, you're treading on thin ice there, man. Like, don't criticize Don Cherry." And it's like, Don Cherry would have took one look at me and said he's not ready for the NHL, he's not ready for the AHL or anything like that. When I was at the peak of my fitness at 19 years of age, he would have rejected me. So to be honest with you, I don't give a shit what Don Cherry thinks about me. I'll say it like it is. The guy's a fucking asshole, and he's spoiled too. He's like a big spoiled old wrinkly baby who's been used to laying down his version of the law, and he's not even correct probably 50% of the time. And I know he's an icon to the National Hockey League. A lot of people view him as a person, when they associate hockey, they think of Don Cherry and all that. And he has had a significant role, and, he probably had to go through many hurdles of his own. But I'm going to get back to why I haven't gone through hurdles of your own, and treating people who have not gone through the same hurdles as you the exact same way as your predecessors is wrong. I'll get back to that point in a minute. But what I am going to say is that he's made the game about himself. He's not a sportscaster. It's about Don Cherry, king of hockey, and that's what Sports Corner was all about. It was about Don Cherry talking about himself, and it's like he took a bit of the game and selfishly made it about himself. He was being a selfish pig, and he's a crybaby too, whether he does it in front of people or not. Because, obviously he's got money for suits. He gets to exercise his authority, maybe not so much anymore because he's just getting too old. He looks like a man who's too high strung. I'm sure he doesn't get as angry as he used to, simply because he's a decrepit old mummy. And, like, I back in the day, I would have probably got, 100 lashes if I were in the NHL for saying that against him. Except the thing is, being a decrepit old mummy and being offended by a few little words because, the NHL career that a previous generation had was different by people who were not me. You know, it don't matter if you got a stern face and you can throw your voice around all bullshit. It still means that you're just a big crybaby, wrinkly old bitch. That's the truth. Whether he would like to hear that or not, I'm not going to tiptoe around him because he's got connections. I'm going to say it like it is. And supposedly he's Cornish, right? On Wikipedia. Whether that's true or not. To tell you the truth, he looks like a fucking Scot to me. And I don't particularly like Scottish people because they're fucking irritating. They have their own version of history, and it's factually incorrect, and they whine and cry about problems that, they didn't themselves face, but happened hundreds of years ago. And it's like, not only that, but I notice a distinct lack of Irish hockey players throughout the NHL history. There have been a few, but none of them were big names like Wayne Gretzky or Mark Messier, and Sidney Crosby does not count because he's black Irish. Okay, he's a type of Irish, but it's not quite the same thing. And he's the guy who was stroking Sidney Crosby big time. He may not have done a lot of it directly himself, although I'm sure he did. I didn't watch too much of Coach's Corner because, I always thought that Don Cherry was a bit of a cunt. However, he would have been behind the movement, which was stroking Sidney Crosby, because that's the type of hockey mentality he has. He's all about stroking one major player on the team who makes the most money. And it's like, yeah, you like quality. Everyone likes quality. But guess what? I like quantity and quality, which is better than seeing him. Not that I think he thinks that way, but some of his associates most certainly do, especially with the way the NHL is ran today. Stroking young hockey players, that could be construed as an underlying homosexual condition. Throwing that out there, okay? It don't mean nothing to me. That's not my mentality. I don't think like that. I'm simply saying that Don Cherry, there's a lot of things to criticize about him, and being a grouchy old man is not an excuse for a bunch of bullshit. There's things that, were not considered wrong before, but they are now. And because they were considered wrong before, does not lessen the fact that they're considered wrong now. You don't get a free pass. It doesn't matter how much money you got. And as I said, about in other videos, he's essentially a wrinkly old poster boy for an organization of old-timer hockey players and coaches and things like that who have, Stone Age mentality on what the fuck the NHL is about or what it should be about. And I understand some of the things, he's right about. But there are other things where it's like, no, you're an old douchebag and you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I mean, Don Cherry, he looks like, someone who won't tolerate somebody calling him a name or anything like that. And then he'll turn around and, treat members of the National Hockey League like total shit. And it's like, you ain't that tough a guy. Certainly not anymore. Not by a long shot. So if you want to continue being a belligerent old cunt, which is what he wants to do, even though his body is telling him he can't do that anymore because he's an old man, why don't we get a few people together and remind him of where his place should be as a respected member of the National Hockey League, and for him to shut his fucking mouth because he's got a lot of fucking problems. And as I said, being old and grouchy is not a fucking excuse. It isn't. It's not a reason and it's not an excuse. And if he thinks it is, then, obviously, we gotta erect a statue of him like Mao Zedong. One that people will piss on 20 years down the road after, he kicks the can. I'm sure he doesn't want that, and I don't really have any particular interest in seeing that happen because he was a member of the NHL, and you may not like everything he did, but that is the way it is, okay? So I have respect for him in that manner. However, I don't think that the new recruits should put up with Don Cherry mentality, whether it's directly from him or not, and, not be able to question the older crowd, especially when they're blatantly wrong, because they're the older crowd. Excuse me, if you're stupid and you fucked up, it doesn't matter how old you are, you're stupid and you fucked up. So, he's got his place, his memorable place in the National Hockey League. Fair enough. I have no interest in disrespecting him. However, behind closed doors, men like him need to be told what they're doing wrong, why they did it wrong, what they've done in the wrong in the past, and why that's not acceptable today, even though they may have thought it was acceptable before. Yeah, really, like, you had your 15 minutes, you took it, you tried to take as much as you could for yourself, for your own greed. Ceaseless greed. And, I haven't watched much of Coach's Corner, and I don't intend on doing so. And, Don Cherry, I could be persuaded into liking him, not liking him, and disliking him. Those are three different things. depending on, certain situations and how he may respond to a character like me. However, I was a gifted young athlete. I didn't spend enough time on the ice. I played a little bit for the UBC Thunderbirds, and I definitely got an impression like my last name is an Irish last name, and I was going to get nowhere. And there are reasons why people can't get into the NHL because, as I have said before, there's only a limited amount of seats as far as players being able to get on a team. So you got to think of reasons for them not being on getting to the NHL. However, I will not tolerate it when uh, uh, people, start to grow as hockey players, intelligent people, and basically the king of the mountain shows up with a club and just clubs them all before they even have a chance and cherry picks the ones he likes, like Sidney Crosby. Why does he like Sidney Crosby so much? Because he made him a lot of money. That's the real truth about Don Cherry. He's not about the game of hockey. He may know all the statistics, all the players and things like that, but the real reason he's there is the money. If there was no money there and he didn't have any personal vendettas against, his opposition during his reign, he would not be there. He would have found some other sport to take great interest in, or some other business venture, because based on his age, it's all about the money, and that's all he ever cared about. And the fact that he knows statistical information like the back of his hand and all that, it's like yada yada yada. There are plenty of jobs out there where there are people who do know that kind of information about their job and are only there for the paycheck. And you know, okay, Don Cherry's watched probably every single National Hockey League game, especially all the important ones, and knows them like the back of his hand. He's probably got every piece of memorable merchandise and all that in a giant house, except he doesn't have one thing. For me, based on I know how he would have looked at me, right off the bat, he would have said, "This guy's never going anywhere in the NHL." That's the truth. No matter what I did, that's exactly what he would think. And I'm not trying to be unreasonable about the situation, but I will point out that that's what it appears to be. And in light of that, I don't need your respect. I don't need you to like me. I don't need any of that sort of stuff. I'm going to go about and do my business. And, sometimes last week's newspaper is something you put in a plastic bag and you preserve. Like I've got a few in my cupboard, actually, of the JFK assassinations. It's simply what I have. It's another hobby I have. It's completely different from this. However, there are also newspapers that are from last week that you kind of tossed in the garbage. It's like whatever. And he has got to wisen up. Because, a belligerent, cranky old bastard is someone you don't want to listen to when you go to watch the National Hockey League, especially someone who's gotten so many good things out of the game. Okay, he's had to go through his hard times, like everybody has, but there are a lot of hard times he didn't go through. So, it's not like his hard times are worse than a lot of other people's hard times. And I've seen him blubbering like a baby on the television before. Yeah, a few drinks of vodka and anybody can blubber like a baby. It's easy. That don't mean nothing though if he forgets it next week. Anyway, so Don Cherry, unless convinced otherwise, I don't like him. Okay? And I explained there's a difference between not liking someone, disliking somebody, and liking someone. There's a difference between those three things. And if someone gives me a reason to dislike him, my opinion will turn to that. If someone gives me a reason to like him, perhaps I'll turn to that way of thinking. But offhand, I think he is an old man and a douchebag. And not all old guys are like him. Sometimes they're decent, respectable people. But sometimes they're just grouchy old cunts that nobody wants to listen to. And if they were drunk at a bar, they'd be the exact type of person you'd go to avoid. Because, yeah, try telling me Don Cherry's never had a fucking drink in his life. Yeah, right. It was the same as, Donald Trump saying, I never drink beer. Except Donald Trump was being funny, whereas Don Cherry is just a grouchy old asshole. Anyway, I'm gonna finish up this video here because I think I got my point across. And, that may have been a bridge I burnt down. However, if on the other end of the bridge was a stupid troll anyway, what do I care if I burnt down the bridge or not? Anyway, talk to you guys later. If you're a creeper or a lurker, a friendly reminder to fuck off. If you genuinely care about watching my channel and things like that, good for you. Anyway, talk to you guys later, and you have a super day.